Because Jews ran their own schools and had learned to read and write, the Soviet state turned to them to carry out the new social welfare programs, and by the turn of the century, there were more Jews engaged in business and holding positions in government than there were indigenous peasants. Copies of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion were circulated in 1903 by those who could read, and the theme of there being stateless international Jews plotting to take over the world became clear in this small popular book that had probably been written as a joke by a couple of Jews over a good bottle of wine, and the population of Europe began to believe that the prominence of Jews in places of influence had been by design. The Trotskyite Jews thought that anyone wanting to immigrate to the Holy Land was a traitor to Judaism, because they weren't supposed to go to Jerusalem until the Messiah appeared, and the nobility had used Jews exclusively as tax collectors in Poland, and as the revolutionaries were bent on bringing down the old world order, so communism in Russia had been born at war with itself. After the trouble with the People's March on Bloody Sunday in 1905, the Bolshevik movement in Russia spread because it was about peasants instead of Marx's proletariat industrial workers, and in Germany, people were glad to have their honest jobs while those not working began joining the communistic revolutionaries. The Russian Navy shot up some British fishing boats at Doggerbank in 1904, thought to be smuggling labor agitators into the motherland, and Jew communists had been at the forefront of labor strikes organized among the communities of the factory workers. And with advancing technology, the revolutionaries were using increasingly sophisticated explosives and firearms to attack the ruling class until it was no longer safe for the nobility to be seen in public. By the first month of 1906, the slander and vitriol against the old world order had gotten so bad and reached such proportions that dozens of newspapers and their editors were shut down and arrested in towns all over Russia, and the Protocols of Zion was taken seriously by more people than just Nazis. The revolutionary Jew communism infiltrating Germany had become a clear and present danger by 1907, and because Germans were accustomed to having the state take care of them with social programs and liberal pensions, the communist agitators were making easy headway while the nobility fought back with everything they had. The new industrial worker that Marx wrote about especially appealed to Germans who had jobs and were proud of their work, while winning over the agricultural peasants in Russia remained an uphill battle, and so the communist agitators explained that communism was scientific, and that approach pretty well appealed to everyone, even though it ended up being less about science and more about being anti-God. Russia didn't have much industry, so the industrial workers were mostly in the larger cities, and the Bolsheviks had basically come from outside Russia and thought they could start a worldwide revolution where the industrial countries would help the more backward ones like Russia. The Bolsheviks printed tons of pamphlets to carry their message, and Lenin thought they'd all be together in Berlin by 1919. The difference between communism and socialism was that socialism was just communism that hadn't yet ripened, and the German government had been running work centers in industrial areas for decades, so communism was expected to be an easy next step. The new scientific theory of genetics caught everyone's imagination, and that meant eugenics and race science that was coupled with the construction of new scientifically designed work camps intended to address the complaints being made by the communists about conditions victimizing the proletariat workers.